Well, hello friends. Welcome to the Ladybird browser update for July 2023. Last month was pretty weird with all these new sponsorships coming in and me going to a conference. So thankfully things have calmed down a little bit since then. However, I have been pretty busy this month putting some of that new sponsorship money to work. So the first thing I want to tell you about is that I hired a full-time engineer to work on Ladybird, and his name is Alex, or Alexander. He is 25 years old and is originally from Belarus, but now lives in Poland. And Alex has been working on Ladybird since October of last year. And he's been all over the place, working on HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and more. And this is exactly what I love about Alex, is that he's always willing to work on anything as long as it's impactful and improves Ladybird. And that's just the right attitude that we need to make progress on this browser. So I'm very, very pleased that Alex accepted my offer, and he's been doing a ton of great stuff already. And you'll be seeing some of that very soon. So let's talk about July Ladybird stuff. First thing, let's look at JavaScript. So last month, we ended at 86.4% pass rate on test 262 with the Bytecode VM, or the bytecode interpreter. And we are now at 94.8% pass rate. And at some point, I decided that this is now good enough, and the Bytecode VM is the default interpreter. And the AST interpreter is now behind a flag, so you can still get it if you run ladybird --AST, although we're probably going to remove the AST interpreter sooner or later because it's not really useful. There are a couple of tests that still don't pass in bytecode, but do pass in AST. But the majority of them are sort of unimportant spec details, not super relevant to real world web content. And in fact, there's a lot of real world websites that work with the bytecode interpreter, but that don't work with AST interpreter. So switching the default engine has just made a lot of websites actually load now. So that has been fantastic. A whole bunch of people have helped out with the bytecode progress. So I know Luke did some big stuff. Daniel worked on it. I worked on it. Alex worked on it. Tim worked on it, and more people have worked on it, and I don't remember everybody right now, so I'm sorry, but if you worked on it, thank you so much. Progress has been great, and it's in better shape than ever. I'm really, really happy that we can now run it by default. We've also indulged ourselves in a little bit of optimization work this month. These optimizations only work with the Bytecode VM, so switching to that has sort of opened up a lot of interesting optimization work that we can do. So this month we have inline caching for own property accesses. So when you get a object property that's an own property, we can now remember the location of that property within the object. And if that location doesn't change by object mutation, then repeated accesses to that same property at the same source location can now be cached and fast. And it's one of those like classical optimizations that every JavaScript engine has, and now we have it too. So that's really good. We still need to implement caching of accesses that end up in the prototype chain, but that's a little bit more complicated, so I haven't gotten into that yet. We also got fast local variables, which Alex did. And this means that variables that are not captured by nested functions and they're not visible to eval, they don't get put into the JavaScript environment, but instead just end up in kind of like a stack frame almost, where you just access them by index instead of by name. And this is obviously a lot faster. And this optimization in particular, I think, made our test runner go like, it shaved like a minute off our test runner or something like that. Some huge amount of time saved, and just everything is faster with this. So really, really nice work by Alex. And Alex also did fast this resolution. And this means that when you do this dot something, or you use the this value in JavaScript, we now remember what that means after the first time you look it up. So if you are within a function and you keep doing this dot something, this dot other, we don't go through this complicated this value resolution process every time, but we cache it the first time. And turns out this was a pretty big improvement as well. I think it was an 8% speed up on one of the Kraken benchmark subtests. So quite nice. And there's a ton of things that we need to and want to do, but these were some really impactful ones that we got done this month. Finally, I should mention I also removed the bytecode optimization pipeline this month, which we had been carrying around for quite some time, despite it never actually optimizing the code. In fact, it just made things slower because it took time to run the optimizer, and then the code didn't run faster after it was optimized. So I decided that this is the month when we get rid of it because it's not giving us any benefit, and it was a source of instability, and it was just annoying to refactor around it all the time. So we've removed the optimization pipeline because it was actually not making anything fast. And in the future, if we ever want to reintroduce such a thing, we will do so with data from tests showing that that actually makes something faster. All right. New this month is we finally have fixed point layout metrics. And we have been using floating point math and doing some sneaky tricks to try to avoid trouble with floating point math, but we still kept hitting troubles like alignment issues on websites that use like very, very precise things like 33.33333333%, and then putting three of those next to each other and expecting it to add up nicely. Sometimes those things would go wrong, and GitHub had issues like that, for example. And now that we have fixed point math in our layout system, this no longer happens. So this is fantastic. It was implemented by Alex, and we ended up using the same exact precision as WebKit. So we have 6 bits for the fractional part of a CSS pixel. And it's really an arbitrary precision, but by using the same precision as WebKit, then at least we know that most of the web has been tested with this exact precision. So at least in theory, we shouldn't see a lot of layout problems, at least not caused by this, because a much bigger engine is using the same precision. Of course, we still have other layout bugs, but that is a separate issue. Something else that has a big web impact this month is IntersectionObserver, which we now have basic support for. And this makes images show up on a lot of pages, which where they previously didn't, which is really exciting. And we also support image loading lazy, which is actually built on top of IntersectionObserver, and that's how the spec says that you should do it. And IntersectionObserver was implemented by Luke, so thank you very much, Luke, for digging the old IntersectionObserver changes out of your stash and making it palatable enough to upstream. This was very helpful on many of the Shopify stores, for example, which I've been debugging a bit lately. And we can finally load images thanks to IntersectionObserver, and thanks to the Bytecode VM, which was also a requirement. Anyway, then we have tons of new CSS features this month, like every month, but this month we got display contents, which Alex did. This feature is used pretty heavily on many modern sites, especially together with grid layouts. And previously we didn't support it at all, so you would get kind of wonky looking layouts. And when Alex implemented it, which was really simple actually, it just snapped a lot of layouts into place and things started looking great immediately. Apple.com was such an example, which now looks really good thanks to display contents. So I'll show you Apple a bit later, but this is really cool. Ali implemented animation timing function. So this gives us access to the various easing curves for animations like cubic, Bezier, and all of those things, which a lot of websites use. So that's cool. I implemented the all property and the revert keyword. So you can assign all properties at the same time in CSS, and you can also revert to the previous cascade origin if you want. Both of those properties were used on a T website that I debug from time to time, the Twinings website. A lot of my work is oriented around getting Twinings to look better lately. I don't know why. I just a little bit obsessed with that website. I also implemented the logical inset properties. So inset inline, inset block, which can be then aliases for like left and right, top and bottom properties, depending on the writing mode and the direction of your document. And we don't actually resolve based on writing mode yet, but we still need to support the names inset inline and inset block because a lot of websites use those. But behind the scenes, we just hard code what they map to as if you are always in a left to right, top to bottom context. And this is something that we'll have to improve eventually as we add support for different directions of layouts. But this was a first step to just having the properties exist at all in the engine. In the CSS grid this month, we got both alignment and justification going. And alignment in particular was fun because that was implemented by Christoph, who works at Shopify. And he spent a couple of days this month working on Ladybird at work as part of like an internal hack event, I guess, that they had. And he said he wanted to improve the layout of a typical Shopify store in Ladybird. And he identified some alignment problems that we had and then was able to fix a bunch of them. So thank you very much, Christoph, for choosing to work on Ladybird and improving our layout system. That was really sweet. And then justification was implemented by Alex. Alex has been doing a lot of stuff, as you can tell. Other goodies, we continue to fix layout bugs left and right. Not a day goes by when we don't fix some layout issues, and this month is no different. So Andy has been doing tons of work on table layouts, on floats, and maybe other things that I forget. Alex has been doing lots of stuff with grid. I was fixing a couple of block layout things, flex layout things, and probably more things that I forget because they disappear from my head after I fix them. But yeah, like lots and lots of layout fixes, and none of them really like stand out individually. But when you see the whole thing by just browsing the web, it is really astonishing just how we keep getting better and better. And websites look more and more like they should, and that's really cool. In other things, Sam continues his crusade to auto-generate more and more of the CSS parser. This month, among other things, he implemented auto-generation of math functions in the CSS parser. So I think that was able to get rid of like 700 something lines of handwritten parser code. So that was really sweet. And the CSS parser is like one of the clunkiest things to open in the IDE. It actually like makes the IDE grind to a halt. So whenever we can take some of that logic and like put it in a code generator instead, I'm happy because it makes it easier to edit the parser if it's become smaller. And actually on that note, I know Ali went this month and did a bunch of work on the parser just to make it faster to edit, make it faster to compile and statically check. And it improved, but it's still kind of sluggish. So more work to do in that area. Finally, I wanted to also mention we've had a bunch of URL parsing improvements. Shannon, in particular, has been going through our URL parser and fixing various spec compliance bugs and adding tests, which is really, really cool. So we keep getting better at URL parsing. I don't know about faster, but we are getting more correct, which is where the focus is right now. I actually fixed the URL parsing thing myself. Also, I implemented parsing of IPv6 addresses in the URL way. So that was nice. Okay. Media elements this month got some quality of life improvements. So Tim did all of these. So he added keyboard navigation for media elements. You can now go back and forth or seek with the left and right keys. You can pause and play with the space bar. And you can change the volume with the up and down keys. And I think maybe you can even press M to mute. I forget. But like a bunch of those things that just kind of make sense, but if they're not there, it's very frustrating. And when they're there, you barely notice. You can also click on the video to pause and unpause, which is a nice touch. So thank you, Tim, for continuing to make our media element support suspiciously nice in Ladybird. Somehow I thought it would take longer before we would get good media element support, and then it just kind of happened, and now they're just there and they just work. So that's really cool. On the testing front, web platform tests continues to improve. We still don't have a continuous runner of it because we're still working on the stability of the runner itself, but Alex found and fixed a big memory leak this month. So previously we were kind of, we would always die after running about 1,500 tests or so. And Alex figured out that we were leaking DOM trees because of a timer leak. And after that got fixed, we were able to progress past 1,500 tests, and that is really cool. But one thing that is becoming clear is that it takes a long time to run the web platform tests, and we're not going to be able to do it on CI because it would just slow down CI too much. So we're going to need to use kind of a separate runner strategy. But it's a little bit too soon to start doing that. We still need to improve the runner enough that it can run consistently. Also, a bunch of UI changes in Ladybird. These are kind of easy to forget, I think, because I tend to look more at the engine parts. But in the UI, we gained support for control wheel zooming in the web content. So you can actually change the zoom scale with the mouse wheel and just, the way you would expect. And now it actually does that. That was implemented by Zach. So thank you, Zach. You can now type data URLs into the location bar and it just loads. That was implemented by Karol. So thank you, Karol. And finally, something that I love is the JavaScript console now has input history. So you can press up and down on the keyboard to browse through things you've typed before in the JavaScript console. And that is tremendously useful if you're typing a long thing and you want to add something to it. You don't have to copy paste it. That was done by Sebastian, so thank you for doing that. We also got support for TinyVG this month, which is a vector graphics format, and it's not accessible to web content, but we use it in our user interface for icons, and in particular, for our toolbar icons in the browser. And this month, they look nicer than ever, especially on HiDPI screens or Retina displays, because Benjamin, who implemented the TinyVG format support, also made a new icon engine for Ladybird so that it can actually render toolbar icons at the right resolution, even if you have a high DPI or low DPI screen. And I don't know if you can actually see it here in the video, but it just looks so much better in HiDPI mode now because we don't give you that pixelated rendering of the arrows and reload. So thank you very much, Benjamin, for implementing TinyVG and using it for our icons here so it can look so good. All right, so we've looked at a bunch of slides. We've talked about a bunch of changes. So now let's do the thing where we actually run the browser, and I'll show you some of the websites that we've been testing with and working on this month. All right, let us fire up Ladybird and start by going to apple.com, which we worked on a bunch this month. In particular, Alex did display contents, which greatly improved layout here. As you can see, the site loads fast and nice, and it even scrolls decently well. If we click on another page here, we'll get some animation right when the products come in, and it's a little bit sluggish. It's a little bit of jank, especially when scrolling here and stuff gets loaded in lazily. There is a bunch of lag, but we are making great progress on this site. So really happy with progress on Apple. Next, let's take a look at Twinings. So my favorite tea website, because I drink a lot of Earl Grey from them. And I've been working on Twinings on and off for months. And it was actually one of the reasons that I started pushing on the bytecode interpreter again, because we needed the bytecode interpreter to run some of the asynchronous code that they have on this site. This month I've fixed a bunch of issues with the layout. So we're now selecting the right serif typeface, and these images pop in lazily with IntersectionObserver. And there have been just a bunch of different things, and the site is almost looking good these days. I don't think I've even shown it before in a video, or maybe I did, but I'm really pleased with the progress on it. There are still issues, of course, like these product images are not supposed to be oval, and I think they have their own typeface that we're supposed to load, but it doesn't parse. And obviously the background image here is a little too low resolution. Also, T is just lurking on top of the Twinings logo up there, and this thing doesn't pop up in the right place. All right. There are more issues to fix here, but it is looking better than ever. A website I worked on a bunch was Qt.io, which is the website of, I guess, the Qt development framework, which I used to work on over a decade ago now. And I just wanted to make the website load in Ladybird, which it does. Although, yeah, when you get down here, there's some more like complex scroll interaction stuff, and we don't support that yet. So we just kind of scroll past the whole thing. But at the start of the month, the site was crashing and not looking good at all. And now it is in pretty decent shape. So I'm happy with that. And another one that Andy has been working on, I've seen a bunch of patches, is Lobsters. So Lobsters now looks really good in Ladybird, to be honest. There are a couple of little layout issues. I see some baseline alignment problems, but dang if it doesn't look good. And in particular, the comment sections on Lobsters is what Andy has been focusing on, just getting these comments to lay out correctly. And it is really nice to see how good it looks. And I guess we still have to fix up this multi-line text editor here, and these two buttons probably should be a little bit more symmetrical, but on the whole, Lobsters is looking pretty dang good. So that is awesome. And I had Amazon loading at one point, but it's really flaky and really JavaScript heavy, so you never know if it's actually going to load or what. We still have a lot of work to do before this thing will work reliably. But let's see. Will you load for me? Yeah, it starts to struggle here with all the products. They're supposed to come in lazily. And I think we need to do some debugging of this site. But again, at the start of the month, it was just crashing. So this is the shape that it's currently in. And we continue to iterate on all kinds of sites. Anyways, this concludes our little quick look here at some sites we've been targeting this month. All right, that's all the things I had to show you today. So thank you so much for stopping by and staying up to date with Ladybird. I am super stoked about the progress that we're making, and I look forward to showing you even more progress next month. But until then, bye.